Hello everyone. So welcome to the session number 9 in our modern Indian history course. So we are entering into the theme 2, that in administrative and the socio-economic policies of the British. In this theme, we'll look at the Indian history or modern Indian history from the perspective of the Governor Generals, right? So we'll start the today's session, and today we'll read the times of Robert Clive and more importantly the times of the Baron Hastings, the first Governor General of the Bengal. So we started our discussion from the idea that modern history. So we have divided the modern history three parts. That is the British conquest, then the British administration, and third the Indian reaction. The British conquest we have seen. We started with the British conquest, for example. We have done, for example, how the British have fought the other European powers, and then we talked about each and every power. Let's say that we talked about later Mughals. We talked about Bengal, Mysore, Maratha, Gorkha, Sindh, Punjab. We talked about Afghanistan, we talked about Tibet, and we talked about the Bhutan as well. These are the things we have talked about, right? We talked about Burma as well, Anglo-Burma relations. And theme 1 was one of the trickiest theme that I have already mentioned you. Now going forward, when we have already done the British conquest, some of the portions of the British conquest will be repeated. Why? Because as we are entering into the administration as well, you must have seen that the conquest period has not only confined itself to the 17th or the 18th century, more importantly the 18th century, but also went on to talk about the 19th century. For example, when we talked about the Punjab, let's say Punjab, Sindh, and Afghanistan, we talked about the 19th century, right? So at that time, the British have already conquered what areas? They have already conquered the Bengal, the Maratha area, and the Mysore area. So obviously they have to devise some sort of administrative system. They have to devise some sort of administrative system there. So your both the process are going on simultaneously. First the conquest and then the administration. And you can see the continuum between these two places as well. And that's why when, for example, today when we'll read about Warren Hastings, we'll give a reference to which war? Anglo-Mysore War. Think about it, which war? Anglo-Mysore War and which Anglo-Maratha War? Anglo-Maratha War. We'll look at it, both of them. Obviously, we'll not read it. We have already read it, but we'll give the reference to it. Now, first of all, pause the video and recognize or realize that which are the wars I'm talking about in the time of the Baron Hastings. Just to recap what we have done, we have read about, for example, in the Ferry's first session, we talked about the Portuguese. In the next session, that was the first session, very quickly. In the second session, we talked about the later Mughals. I keep on rewinding it and I keep on revising what we have done previously so as to make sure that wherever you find the link, okay, now I have to revise the third lecture. You can go back to your notes or the PDF, you can revise it again. Then in the third lecture, we talked about the how the British have tackled the other European power, Danish, Danes, French, and the others. Then in the fourth, we talked about the conquest of the Bengal. In the fifth, we talked about the conquest of the Mysore. Then in the sixth, we talked about the conquest of the Marathas. Right. Then the seventh, we talked about the story of the Nepal. We talked about the story of the Bhutan, and we talked about the story of the Burma. And the last one, we talked about how British conquered the Northwest, that is Afghanistan, Sindh, and the Punjab. In the Punjab story, we have not looked at the Guru story, hai na? From Guru Nanak Dev to Guru Gobind Singh and Banda Bahadur story. We have not looked at the Banda Bahadur story as well. That will be taught to you in the medieval history. But yes, I promise that after the sessions are over, if the time permits, I will take up that as an additional session, and that will be given you as a link, or that will be added to your lectures later on. Okay, right. So today we are going into the era of the British Governor Generals. We will see from the time of the EIC, we'll trace the time to your 1784 time. Okay, so let us start. You remember this slide when we talked about how English were getting ready for India and they have established this British East India Company. We have read about Francis Drake's voyage around the world, and we talked about the how the when the British won a victory over the Spanish Armada, how it led to their confidence, how their confidence was up that yes, we can take up such expeditions. So they had the knowledge of the high profits because at that time the Vasco da Gama has returned from his voyage to India, and obviously the English traders wanted a share. So English merchants have formed this merchants adventures, and they got the uh, charter from King Elizabeth I, right, of the exclusive trade, and they formed this particular company. When a private company is formed, you must have prepared in your economy, in the finance within the economy, that when a private company is formed, they take up the money. They can take up the money in the form of the debt or in the form of the equity. When they take up the money in the form of the equity, those people are called the shareholders. And here, these people are the court of the proprietors. Now, these people, on the basis of the election, annually elects 24 people, those were known as the court of director. In a company, you can imagine that as a board of director. होते हैं ना, board of directors, and then shareholders, similar like that. So similarly, remember these terms because this can be asked in UPSC. So court of directors are the shareholders. They annually elect court of directors. These court of directors will look at the day-to-day decisions of the East India Company. Remember, it is a private enterprise. It is not unlike the French enterprise, which later on became nationalized and it became a state enterprise. No, it's not like that. It is not a State Bank of India, rather it's an HDFC Bank kind of thing. Chalo. So they got permission from the king and the queen, and finally the court of director decided that what is going to be the trajectory with which the East India Company will go forward. For example, they have sent William Hawkins, then Thomas Best, who fought in the Battle of Swali, which rooted out the Portuguese. Then they established their base in 1613 in Surat, and the story goes on that we have discussed. This is the East India Company. So obviously, when they'll be in India, they will set up their factories, their bases. They will establish different offices. They will send different officials, and those officials will be named as the governors. The one of the last governor was the Robert Clive, who ruled in the Bengal after the Battle of Buxar, 1764. Robert Clive ruled Bengal as a governor of the Fort William. That title was governor. Remember, that title was governor. Then by 1772, William Warren Hastings also became the governor of the Fort William. Right. So this is the situation. Meanwhile, they have won the Battle of Palasi, Battle of Buxar, Battle of Wandiwash, Battle of Bidara. All these things they have already won. Now, at that time, what was the situation? If you recall what Clive had introduced, that is the dual government in the Bengal, right? Diwani rights were given to the Britishers, and the Nijamat rights, the law and order, the police functions are given to the Nawab, who has no power over the revenue. In that time, the corruption increased. There was a very titanic quantum of the corruption was there in the East India Company. These officials used to do their own private businesses, private trade, and they themselves became the Nawabs. They used to live like Nawabs. And the situation was so poor of the East India Company because of the corruptions, because of the war, because of lot of corruption, lack of administration, lack of administrative efficiency, poor working by the officials, that they have to ask for £1 million loan from the parliament. Remember, the company has to ask for the loan from the parliament. Now the parliament was so shocked to hear it, that how can this company which is winning, which is established a crown jewel of the India, was a crown jewel. Now they are ruling over India. They have won over the India. Now they are asking for £1 million of money. This is not acceptable to the parliament. Parliament has said, no, this is not possible and we will not tolerate this. Keep in mind that story. Now the parliament is getting the information. Let us read something about the Clive. So he was said to be the founder of the British Indian Empire. He was a clerk in Madras. So you can see how much opportunity has been provided by the Britishers to the lower officials. From a clerk of the Punjab, he rose up to the rank of the governor of the Fort Williams. Fort Williams, that is in Calcutta. And this was one of the reasons why the English East India Company flourished and the French East India Company did not. Because here they gave an emphasis or given chances to the people, enterprising people like Robert Clive, to express themselves, advocate their ideas, so as to gain more territory and win more wars. So he was a British administrator and the military leader to start with, who his destiny brought him to India, and he worked in the various capacity in the British India Company. He overall had 3 visits to India. He had 3 visits to India overall. Remember that. He was the Governor General of the Bengal before the Regulating Act of the 1773, which actually marked the beginning of the British rule. We will see that. He was involved in the Battle of Palasi. We know that he wanted to take revenge from the Sujauddaulah for the Black Hole incident. Remember Black Hole incident in the Fort William? He wanted to take revenge from Surajuddaulah. Then he established it was his brainchild, that is the dual government, which is there, which was established after your Battle of Buxar, which was stopped by the Warren Hastings. We have discussed that. Civil service was organized during the Clive's tenure. Some sort of organization was started. He prohibited the employees from undertaking private trade or accept any gift, but that was not done. He prohibited, obviously he tried, but it was not done. He also involved in the first Anglo-Mysore War, 1666, 1766 and 69, in which the British have lost. The Haider Ali has won. Okay? So this was Mr. Robert Clive. Not more information is needed with respect to Robert Clive. Now, when the Robert Clive, it was his brainchild that we have discussed, the dual government in the Bengal post Battle of Buxar. So the Devani rights, fiscal rights were given to the East India Company, and the Nijamat right, that is the territorial rights, were given to the Britishers or to the EIC company. So they got the responsibility. They got the, sorry, it was not, sorry. These powers were given to the Nawab, and these powers were given to the Britishers. So they got the responsibility of law and order, defense, and dispersing the justice without the power, and they got the power without any responsibility. Consequences we have all read. The very poor position of the Bengal. Bengal suffered a famine in 1770. Very big famine they suffered. Their merchants lost a lot. Administration was very chaotic. Officials, they became rich at the expense of both company and the Indians. So officials became rich, the company became the poor, and the Indians obviously were becoming the poor. British revenue collection has hit, as we have discussed. So everything gone haywire with the dual administration. And hence, when the Warren Hastings will come in 1773, when he'll become the super authority, he will abolish this particular system. Chaliye. Now, let's go back a bit. Now get back to the old story. So earlier, before this 1773 Act, the home government in the England consisted of the court of director and the court of the proprietor. Home government means the EIC was divided into these things. In India, each of the 3 presidencies, in India 3 different presidencies were established. First Calcutta, Bombay, and the Madras. 3 major areas where the British have captured the power. 3 presidencies were there, and they were not responsible. For example, no one is superior and no one is inferior. Everyone is responsible to the home government, to the court of directors directly. Okay? But obviously, Bengal was the most influential and the most richest province. Okay? So disaster famine which broke out in Bengal in 1770 affected the agriculturists. As a result, revenue collection was poor and the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. We have discussed that they wanted from the parliament 1 million pound of the loans. Now there was an inquiry in the parliament. When the parliament has heard that they wanted this much loan, and the situation of the British East India Company, such a poor shape they are in, and ultimately it was the monarch with the authority of the parliament has given the charter, go ahead and do the trade. Now the parliament was very thoughtful that what is happening. So they decided that they will appoint a committee, that is a select committee that they have, established to inquire into the affairs of the company. Okay, they decided that we will inquire into the affairs of the company, and that committee's report led to the enactment of the regulating act. Let us see more context. Now remember, English ruled India on the pretext of what? The British ruled India in the pretext of that we are on a civilizational mission. Remember that. This is the moral high ground that they established for themselves to rule India. Imagine you are doing to do some atrocity on anyone. Obviously, you know that, but you will try to justify yourself, right? And you justify yourself by saying any number of things that is good for him, that is good for me, that is good for their generation. It happens, right? So that is called the moral high ground. So they created their moral high ground by saying that we will civilize these Indians. We are doing the British thing. The Britishers are not savages. These Indians are savages. This was the moral high ground that they will convince their people that's why we are going into the India. Remember it, because Britain was a democracy at that point of time. When they were a democracy at that point of time, obviously they have to justify their actions to their people. And this is a reiterating theme you'll see till the end of the independence. Because the British government has to justify it to their people that what we are doing. Similarly, you must have read in your world history also what happened in the Vietnam War. Vietnam War was the first televised war, because the public has seen that how much atrocity has been committed by the US government on the Vietnamese people. The journalists that were there, because it is a democracy, the journalists that went from America to the Vietnam, they have seen what kind of atrocities are being done by the Americans on the Vietnamese. When the American public has seen that, the public sentiment went against it. The public sentiment went against Vietnam War, and then the USA has to backtrack. Similarly, these Britishers have to showcase the similar argument we have read for the Black Hole tragedy also. For doing the Battle of Plassey, for Battle of Buxar, they needed a moral high ground. And the moral high ground was Black Hole incident, that these people have been savages, they have committed this on us. Hence, it becomes the responsibility upon us to protect our own people as well as protect other Indians from these savage rulers. That kind of a thing. Now coming to our context. Now confused system was there because of the dual government. Dual government was a confused system, and the people become helpless. As we have seen, the famine happened, many people died, the agriculture was destroyed, the merchants got destroyed, they become beggars like situation. The corrupt servants of the company, they became the English Nawab. They were living their life in luxury because of the private trade that they are doing on their own behalf. The company itself was on the bank of bankruptcy. We have discussed that. They asked for a $1 million, 1 million euros loan. Pound loan, sorry, not euros. At that time, pound was there. And the parliament cannot be the mute spectator seeing all these things. Parliament se manga gaya loan. They asked loans from the parliament, and the parliament decided, no, we will take care of what is happening. We cannot let this happen. We have to regulate. And from this idea, they have appointed the select committee under the prime ministership of Lord North, and hence the idea of the regulating act has come. Now, before discussing any act, let's try to paint a picture of that time. What will happen in this regulating act? What they will try to do? There will be some changes on the British side of things. For example, they will try to do something with this court of directors. Then there will be some things will be done in the Indian side. They will try to streamline the administration. Streamline the administration in India. That's all. They want this court of director to be more accountable to the parliament, because it is the court of director which is calling all the shots, you know, in India. Hence, they need to be made accountable to the parliament. And this is what the whole idea of the regulating act was. If we see the Britain side of it, so they increase the qualification of the voting. That means who can vote out of these shareholders. So they have said those who have at least invested £1,000, they can invest, so that each and every one is not applicable to pay the to vote, because this court of directors were also used to pay a lot of corruption to the shareholders that elect us. Imagine the election being happening, right? For example, there are some court of directors to be elected from the court of proprietors. So obviously some election mein jo khade honge, they'll pay a lot of money that select us. So a lot of corruption was here as well at this level. So to eradicate that corruption, some steps have been taken. For example, as we have discussed, they have raised this from 50 pound, 500 pound to 1000 pound. Earlier, annual election has to happen. Modi ji keh rahe na that simultaneous election needs to happen. Similarly, their annual election used to happen. Now they've said we will have election after 4 years. But obviously, 1/4 will retire every year, just like in Rajya Sabha. So everyone after everyone will have 4 years of tenure, but every year there will be 1/4 who will be retired. For example, this year they will be retired, next year they will retire, next year they will retire, next year they will retire. So after 4 years, you will have a completely different parliament that is there. Oh, sorry, not parliament. This is court of director. And this court of director has to submit all the documents to the revenue secretary in the government. So these are the things that are being set up, and these are the things which are being set. Ki bhai, the company has to be more regulated. Their affairs needs to be regulated more. And these are the provisions of the Regulating Act. Okay, fine. What were the changes that were brought in India? For example, the governor at the Fort William, this title which was changed, because they want to streamline the administration. Now imagine, currently the administration is like that each and every presidency is accountable to the, not to each other, but to another government. So obviously it will give a lot of anarchy and lot of discretion to these presidencies, different presidencies. And hence it was made that now the Calcutta will be given the superintendence, or Calcutta will be given the more power. So the governor of the Fort William has been given the title of the Governor General of the Bengal, and the first Governor General of the Bengal became whom? Warren Hastings. Okay. Now the Governor General, second point, has to be assisted by a council. Obviously, the Modi ji has to be assisted by a council of ministers, and this executive council will be of the 4 members. These 4 members, now remember, these 4 members means 1 plus 4. These 4 members will be accountable, or they will be removed by the monarch on the representation of the COD. That means that it is the court of director who are controlling these 4 members. Now there is one Governor General of Bengal, and there are 4 people who is helping him. Now these 4 people are not dependent upon him, they're dependent on someone else. And this is where you will see the clash happening later on between the Warren Hastings and the 4 people which are being appointed. Imagine, keep in mind also the one thing, that Warren Hastings has been in India before. Now these 4 people are not in India. They will be sent from the England to India. That will also play a very important role later on. Now the term which is given, this is the 5-year term which is given. And all the decisions that they will take, all the decisions will be taken by the majority. For example, recently in our election commission, CEC and 2 election commissioners are there, but CEC does not have the right to veto. He has no veto power. If 2 EC says we will have to do it and EC says no, then their thing will be considered, because they are in majority. 2 people have voted for this. Similarly here, the Governor General did not have the veto, so there was no veto power with respect to the, sorry, there is yes, so there is no veto power which is given to the Governor General. No veto power has been given. Then it has been given the military and the civilian power over the Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. The EIC servants, their salary was raised so as to making sure that they don't do this immoral activities. Why the people are doing the trading? Why the UPSC or the IS officer? One of the reasons they are being corrupt. Why? Because their salary is less as compared to their counterparts. in the private sector, let's say. So it was assumed that if you increase their salary, the immoral activities will reduce. Then there was a very important decision, that is the establishment of the Supreme Court that is there. So one Chief Justice and 3 other judges will be appointed. So all these were the provisions of the Regulating Act. Let me tell you right from at this juncture, all the acts which are there are very, 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 very important. Because not this one is important, then Fits India Act, and then all the charters which come, and then later on till Government of India Act of 1935, all the acts are very, very important. Every year you will find 1 to 2 questions coming from this. In all your test series, you will be flooded with the questions on these acts. So what we can do, we can first of all revise from here, then we can provide the compilation as well, so as to finally you can revise from these notes later on. Okay, I'll do that, not an issue. The compilations will be provided to you later on. But remember, prepare from those compilations, and before your exam you have to revise all these acts. Why? Because these are very, very important for your preparation. Now coming back to the topic. Now the Warren Hastings, as we have discussed, he was the one, but the 4 people, those who were there, they did not like Hastings. These people came from England and with the prejudice mindset that Warren Hastings is a very corrupt person with a lot of bribe. Why? Because you see, the East India Company's situation was not good. Warren Hastings was already in India. Now they came, for example, they came 1 year or 2 years after this act was passed. Obviously, after that they will come to India, and when they will come, they will have the mindset that I have to, or this Warren Hastings is very corrupt. So all these people themselves are very corrupt, very ambitious. For example, Mr. Francis wanted to replace Warren Hastings himself, and they have shown a lot of tantrums. For example, when they arrived in India, they did not get the proper reception, and they said that my reception to which is given by the, which should be according to them, which should have been given by the Warren Hastings, is inadequate, and it is a kind of an insult to us. So you can see that kind of tantrums they throw, and obviously they did not have a positive outlook towards the Warren Hastings. Okay. Now they obviously, when they have this kind of issues, they will have a lot of issues with the policies of the Warren Hastings, especially the policies with respect to the external affairs or the foreign policy. For example, we will discuss the Rohilla War led by the Warren Hastings. It was very much disputed. Warren Hastings was too much criticized. The foreign policies, we will see, all these things will be questioned, and a lot of things. And that is why Warren Hastings also felt and also wrote a lot of letters saying that a lot of effort that I want to take are being derailed, outvoted, and overruled by these people. Because remember, Warren Hastings did not have a veto here. He has no veto here in this situation. Now, let us understand the times of the arrival of the Warren Hastings. Arrival as in when he became the Governor General. First of all, the company tore the mask of the Mughal sovereignty. They said no longer that we have to proclaim that Mughal is sovereign and we are working just as a trader, something like that. No, they tore the mask of the Mughal sovereignty, and they ruled Bengal by the right of the conquest, that we have won Bengal and now we will rule like that. This was the authority. For example, you see, after Battle of Palasi was won, they have not taken any political role. Even in the dual government also, they have just working on this commercial side of things. Now they are working to become a political entity. They tore off that mask. Ki bhai, we are the de facto ruler, wala nahi. We are de facto and de jure. We are the ruler. That's it. Then the Warren Hastings has to give the Bengal a workable system of the administration, because we have seen, because earlier there was a lot of confusion, chaos was there. So he has to provide a workable form of the administration. Then when you have to provide a workable form of administration, you have to transform a company of the merchants who are ignorant of the customs and the habits of the Indian people. Because now you are entering into the arena where you have to dispense justice, where you have to maintain law and order, where you have to collect the revenue, where you have to provide the education, where you have to understand these people, those who are going to rule. Because earlier these people are not ruling. Earlier they were also only taking the money out of it. but now they are also ruling. They are thinking that how much we can, for example, how much we can extract out of it. So to become an able administrator, you have to understand the people down there, right? Empathy एक value है ना हमारे ethics में. There's a very important value known as empathy. So they become a very important. So they have to understand these customs and the habits of these Indian people. They have to rehabilitate the finance of the company and develop its commerce. Obviously, ये तो काम करना ही करना था because EIC was in a very bad financial shape. ठीक है, चलो. These were the time of the arrival of the Warren Hastings. Now let me tell you from the mains perspective. If any question of the Warren Hastings comes, this becomes your context. This becomes your introduction. So remember it. For each and every Governor General, you have to provide your introduction, or that can be one of the ways you can start your modern history questions by saying that these are the areas, or these are the things that are done in an introduction. Okay? You provide the context in which he or he is arriving. Basically, there is no she. Now, reforms of the Hastings can be read into 4 headings or 6 headings. First is administrative judicial, different you can say. Then revenue and commercial, then social reforms, and the external relations. These are the 4 headings where we have to read Warren Hastings. For Warren Hastings, what are the things that are important? In fact, for any Governor General, the things that are important. Firstly, the time in which he arrived. What is the situation of India? Then what are the efforts are being taken? Then what are the implications of those? Then what are the estimate of a particular Governor General? That's it. How you estimate him after whatever he has done, or whatever situation he has left India. So these are the ways you can evaluate a particular Governor General. So now let's start the administrative one. Now you remember Treaty of Allahabad happened. So it was a promise to pay 26 lakh to the king. Now the Warren Hastings knew that this money is very difficult to pay, right? It's very difficult to pay that sort of money. Now when this sort of money is difficult to pay, what he will do, he will later on change this relationship. He will alter this relationship. He will reduce the money that is given to the Shah Alam II, first of all, Warren Hastings. Secondly, you can see Nawab agreed to surrender these places, Allahabad and Kara. Now this place will be given back to the Nawab later on, as we will see, by Warren Hastings in the lieu of the money. You pay us more money and we will give this back to you. We just want more money, and the money is the main consideration behind the actions of the Warren Hastings. Let us start. So one of the administrative reform that we have already read, that he ended this dual system which was started by the Clive. The governors and the council, 4 members, they have formed a board of revenue who appoint the collectors to extract the land revenue from the peasants. They reduce the allowances of the Nawab, as we have discussed, Nawab of Bengal specifically here. Right? They were sent in exile, and their allowances were also reduced. They stopped the payment of 26 lakh to the emperor, and the relationships have become redefined. As we have discussed, they tore off the mask of the Mughal sovereignty. This is the administrative reforms being taken up by the Warren Hastings. Then very important reforms are the judicial reforms. So what was the situation before Warren Hastings? Before Warren Hastings, the judicial system was again a lot of abuses, and the chaos was there. The Nawab was used to be the chief administrator of justice, and the local zamindars, they used to act as a judge in their own cases. We were highly corrupt and highly prejudiced. They used to work in their own cases, and the people did not get any semblance of justice. Judicial institutions have an extreme corruption. This was the situation before Warren Hastings has overtaken this governor generalship of the Bengal. So he decided to set up a system based upon the Mughal model. So he set up at the district level. It is at the district level, Diwani Adalat and the Faujdari Adalat. Diwani, from the Diwani name fiscal, that is for the civil cases, and Faujdari means criminal cases. Both of them will be headed by a collector. Let us understand first the civil cases. So civil cases such as marriage, such as revenue, such as all these civil cases which are there. For that, you have the laws, which laws will be followed the religious wise. For example, if you are a Hindu, Hindu, if you are a Muslim, Muslim. This kind of laws will be followed. And appeal lies to the Sadar Diwani Adalat, which will be established at Calcutta, presided by the president. So this is your Sadar Diwani Adalat. Then you have the criminal court, which will follow the Mohammedan law, which will be set up at the Sadar Nijamat Adalat by the deputy Nazim, and which is held by the chief Qazi and chief Mufti. In fact, when collector, when working as a head of the Faujdari Adalat in the district level, he is held by the Qazis and the Muftis. So remember, when the Mohammedan laws or the Mughal time laws are being followed in the criminal justice system, criminal side of it. In the civil side of it, they are doing it religion wise, but on the criminal side of it, they are following the Mohammedan laws, and then they have to obviously take the help of these Qazis and the Muftis and the Maulvis. Okay? So this was a system at the district level, and the appeal lies to the next level. So we have the Sadar Diwani Adalat for the civil system and Sadar Nijamat Adalat for the criminal system. Right? One more thing was done by the Britishers. Now you see, because these are the collectors appointed by the Britishers, Englishmen, they have to take up the help of these people. So they have to have the people who are good in these laws, Hindu and the Muslim laws. So the experts in the Hindu and Muslim laws are to be provided to assist the judges. They have to codify these laws as well, so as to bring a sense of the uniformity and the sense of a integrity, sense of a consistency in the law. So for example, you need to remember this name, that this was done in the time of the Warren Hastings, the Code of the Gento laws. Translation of the code in the Sanskrit appeared in 1776 under the title of the Code of the Gento laws. So here remember, this happened in the times of the Warren Hastings. So these are your judicial reforms. Okay? These are your judicial reforms by the Warren Hastings. Let us look at the revenue and the commercial reforms. Firstly, the revenue reforms. Now, revenue reforms at the time of the Akbar, we have read that Todarmal has done. In fact, that was based upon the quality of the soil, and which was helpful for the farmers. But when that was broken down, it led to a lot of confusion that how this land revenue has to be extracted. And the policy of the Warren Hastings was based upon the experimentation and the idea of the trial and error. That we will do it a very ad hoc basis, and we'll do it based upon the idea of the trial and error. We don't have a proper system to do these things. This was the policy of the Warren Hastings. Hence, he started first the system of the 5-year settlement system, to which the highest bidder will be given the land for the revenue collection. That, for example, people will come that we will provide, let's say someone says we'll provide 10 lakh, someone says 15 lakh. So 15 lakh person will be given the highest bid if his bid is highest. And he will be said that you provide us 15 lakh per year and this land is yours. So reforms became very important later on within 1 year, because these collectors become very, very corrupt. Then the Warren Hastings has established this committee of the revenue at Calcutta, which led to more centralization. And then in 1776, when this 5-year have been completed, he started doing the 1-year Balat. Annual settlement based upon the highest bidder were given in 1776. So you see a lot of hit and trial and every experimentation is there. When we look at into the next Governor General, that is Lord Cornwallis, then we will look at that how he came up with a permanent settlement system, and that with that he established his own name in the land revenue system. Okay? Now let's come to the commercial reform. Commercial reform, you can imagine that while, for example, GST and all. Now commercial reform, so as to ease of doing business in a sense. So commercial reform, for example, he also wanted to clear the bottleneck, because one of the criteria, what the time in the Warren Hastings has come, that East India companies were also facing a problem to conduct the proper trade. They have to increase their trade, they have to increase their revenue and improve the situation of the company. So he wanted to clear the bottlenecks to improve the internal trade. various custom houses which was there earlier, a lot of custom houses. For example, you have to go to here, you enter from one territory to the other territory, you have to pay the rent here. You went from this territory to this territory, you have to pay the rent here. Now he abolished everything and he set up only 5 custom houses. He lowered the duty payable for all merchants, only 2.5% of duty which has been done. All the merchants, whether it is English or an Indian. He checked the misuse of the dastaks that are the passes. So he checked the misuse of these dastaks, because these dastaks were a lot of source of the corruption. These dastaks were given so as to where you can pass through these customs without paying any tax. So these dastaks were misused, for which a lot of corruption has been taking place, and plus this EIC is not getting any money at anywhere. So they misuse, they stop, they check the use of these dastaks. Then checks the exploitation of the weaver by the company's agent. So a lot of weavers were there, Indian weavers. So company's agents used to exploit them. So he checked the exploitation of that, and he established the trade relation with the Tibet and the Bhutan. So you have to remember at least 3 to 4 points out of these things, है ना? थोड़े, because imagine it, for example, the question coming in the mains examination. So you have only chance to write 2 to 3 points on these things, है ना? उससे ज़्यादा opportunity नहीं है. You don't have more opportunity than that. So you have to remember it like that only. Then you have the social reforms by the Baron Hastings. Firstly, he believed that the natives have to be ruled in their own customs. That's what we have seen when he devised his justice system as well. That he followed the civilian laws with respect to the religion, and the Muhammad laws, or the criminal laws based upon the Muhammadan laws which are being followed at that time. He decided that they have to be ruled in their own laws. This was the thinking of the Baron Hastings. He was also very passionate about the Asia's past, and he wanted to look more into it. So that's why a Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal was established under the leadership of the William Jones. Okay? Sir William Jones. Whenever there is a question, one question you can expect, the role of the foreigners in the India. What are the role foreigners have played? So one very prominent example will come of the William Jones. He has played a very important role in the Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal. Then next is very important. The Warren Hastings has set up this Calcutta Madrasa in 1781 for the study and the learning of the Persia and the Arabic. In 1791, the efforts of the Jonathan Duncan opened the Sanskrit College in Banaras. So Calcutta Madrasa and the efforts of the Jonathan Duncan opened the Sanskrit College in the Banaras. Okay? For understanding law, literature, and the religion of the Hindus. So ये line याद रखनी है. You have to remember this, that he set up Calcutta Madrasa, Warren Hastings, and later on efforts of the Jonathan Duncan opened the Sanskrit College in the Banaras. Then we talk about the external relations of the Warren Hastings. What are the external policy adopted by the Warren Hastings? Now, external policy means you can see from Bengal, if you look at the other places, they become the external policy in a sense. So you know that they fought against the Marathas, they fought against the Mysore. They had a war, that is Rohilla War, Rohilkhand War. The relationship with the Mughal emperor, for example, these all are become the part of your external relation. For example, you can write that Mughal emperor pension was reduced, the clock of the Mughal sovereignty was eroded, right? The relationship was redefined. He had a treaty of Banaras with the Nawab of your Awadh. We'll look at it. Then the other treaties with the Marathas and your Mysore. Chalo. So Treaty of Salbai, after a lot of here and there with the Marathas. And you remember here one more story that is, I think, there or not. Yes, that the story that why this Bombay presidency was acting on its own, the Calcutta presidency did not like it. He had the final authority because the regulating act has given him the authority, but regulating act was not very clear. For example, these presidencies like their own independence. Imagine writing with one act, will the ground situation will change? No. Earlier these presidencies were acting in their own. And that is why this Bombay presidency done a treaty of Surat with the, they have done the treaty of Surat, right? And then they have to do what? Calcutta, Warren Hastings did not like it. And then finally they have to try the treaty of your Salibai. And this happened in the time of the Maratha. So you can see that Warren Hastings facing a lot of challenges with your, a lot of challenges which they are facing with the, within themselves, within these presidencies. So one of the challenge to the Warren Hastings comes within his council. And the second challenge came with the other presidencies, because these other presidencies were not in the mood to be subdued. They did not wanted to be subdued. Okay? Chalo. Then you have your second Anglo-Mysore war at that time. In the first war, who lost? In the first war, English lost in the times of your Robert Clive. But in the times of Warren Hastings, it was a draw. Hyder Ali died. Second Anglo-Mysore war. So this happened in the times of your Warren Hastings. And some of the things that Warren Hastings did here was not liked by his council. His council did not like a lot of things which was being done. For example, overruling the Bombay presidency. They said that if they have done the treaty with Raghunath Rao, why you need to get in? He can support him. Why you need to subdue? Why do you not like the treaty being done by the Bombay government? So these are the things were not liked by the Warren Hastings council. You can see this one. That is Treaty of Banaras. So Sujat-Dowla bought the Mughal provinces. He bought the Mughal provinces of the Kora and the Allahabad in the Treaty of Banaras in 1773 with the Britishers. And the Britishers have promised the Sujat-Dowla that we will provide you help if you want, if in the case the Marathas attack you. Okay? And we'll see one more person there, one more story related to it. And that is why in 1774, what happened? The Britishers went to help the Nawab to fight against the Rohilla kingdom. What was the story behind it? So the Rohilla ruler, Rohilla Khand ruler, has done one treaty with the Nawab of Awadh that in case of the Maratha attack us, you provide us help. Now Maratha did not attack. Maratha threat receded at that time, 1774. So what happened? The Awadh Nawab has said that you promised us, and they have said that we will provide you 40 lakh rupees. We will provide you 40 lakh rupees. But the Maratha did not attack. Now the Nawab of Awadh feared attack by the Marathas. Hence, what they have to do? I'm just actually the message has come. Sorry. Just restart, huh? Thoda sa. Let's recap. What happened? So the ruler of the Rohilkhand had a treaty with the ruler of the Awadh that the Marathas, if they attack us, you will help us. But the Maratha did not attack. Maratha threat receded. Now the treaty which has happened, the Awadh said that you give us 40 lakh rupees. But when the attack did not happen, but they still asked for this 40 lakh rupees. This Rahmat Khan of the ruler of the Rohilkhand said, I don't have to pay this money. So Nawab said, no, we will invade Rohilkhand. And the British helped the Nawab because British have done this treaty of Banaras with the Nawab. Now that is why Warren Hastings was severely criticized. Why? Because why you supported the Awadh of Nawab when ruler of the Rohilkhand did not do anything? This was one of the things for which the Warren Hastings was criticized. You understood why he was criticized? Why you helped the Nawab of Awadh in doing so? Why you did so? And that is the problem. So you can see this area of Rohilkhand. This is the present day UP map, and this is the area of the Rohilkhand. Okay? This is the area of Awadh. Okay? This is your area of Purvanchal where the Gorakhpur is there. Gorakhpur. This is the area of Purvanchal. Okay? This is the area of Doab, upper Doab, middle Doab, lower Doab. And this is the area of the Bundelkhand. These are very politically important areas that are there. Okay? So the Rohilkhand story is like that. And for that, Warren Hastings was criticized. So these are all the reforms of the Warren Hastings that we have discussed. Last few years, from 1777, because of these acts by the Warren Hastings, some impeachment proceedings started against him in the court in the England. But he paid some bribe to this court of directors, and the matter subsided down. But later on, when he retired in 1785, went back to England, again a whole impeachment motion went against him. A trial happened of the Warren Hastings. And in that trial, finally he came out of it. So this was the story of the Hastings in the last few years. There are a few more acts for which Warren Hastings is severely criticized. On what grounds these impeachment charges are being made? Let us understand a few of them. I've kept the theory, I've kept a lot of content. You can revise from those notes also. For example, one was the case of Nanda Kumar case. Now, this Nanda Kumar did not like Warren Hastings. He was an influential official in the Bengal. He did not like Warren Hastings. He had some corruption charges against the Warren Hastings, which he wanted to portray into the Supreme Court in India against Warren Hastings. And Warren Hastings get to know about him. What he did? He conspired with the Chief Justice. He was the Chief Justice, Sir Elijah Limpy. So he conspired with the Supreme Court Justice, and he get himself hanged for the normal charge of forgery. That he has done some forgery, this Mr. Nanda Kumar, and he needs to be hanged. And he was hanged. Now this was disastrous. People said, who is hanged in the for such petty offenses, for offenses such as forgery? Who are these who hangs these people? No, this is not done. And this, for which the Warren Hastings was put under the trial. Next is the Warren Hastings imposed heavy penalties on Raja Chet Singh of Banaras. What happened? So Warren Hastings has said that this Raja of Banaras, you have to pay us some money. Okay. And he, for example, he said that this amount of money needs to be paid to us. Then after that money, he said, this extra money, 5 lakh rupees extra you have to pay. He said, okay. But he kept on asking this extra money later on, because you understand, Warren Hastings was going for the money wala issue with the East India Company. So he extracted a lot of money from him. Now Raja of Banaras was very humble. He tried to persuade Warren Hastings, but he did not meet him. And finally, he was deposed. And then someone else was put on the throne, and he said, okay, I will pay you money. So it was a very unjust way with which he has done this thing. So you see, Chet Singh fled for Gwalior, and his kingdom was given to one of his nephews who agreed to pay the sum of the 40 lakhs annually to the company. You can read more story here. Not very important for prelims, not important for mains, but just to know that what are the charges, or when you write the Warren Hastings, the negative side of the Warren Hastings, you can mention these cases. First case is the Rohilkhand War. Second case is Raja Chet Singh of Banaras. Next case is Mr. Nanda Kumar. But there is one more case of the Begum of the Awadh. Now Shujauddola's wife and his daughter, the Nawab, conspired with the East India Company to take money from these two. They have a lot of wealth with themselves, the Jagirs, the money and all these things. And the EIC worked with the Nawab to get the money from these Begums, the mother and the grandmother of the Nawab of Awadh. Now this is the problem. That means that this is the extent to which Warren Hastings went, and all these policies were heavily criticized. You can read more about it here. ठीक है, चलो. And when you will see the impeachment that has happened of the Warren Hastings, these are the cases which are being brought up, and for that Warren Hastings was tried. चलो defects in the ruling regulating act की बात करते हैं. Let's talk about the defects in the regulating act 1773. So act rendered the governor general powerless because he has no veto to him. He was overruled and overvoted every time because he was one against the five, against the four, sorry. There are 5 people. Then provision regarding the Supreme Court at the Fort William was very vague and very defective. For example, who will have the authority? Governor General. For example, if the cases comes on the Governor General, who have the authority? Governor General or the Supreme Court? So it was not very clear. It was first time being devised, so obviously some problems will be there. Then the problem that presidency of the Bombay and the Madras continued to act on their discretion on the pretext of the emergencies and continued war and alliances without caring for the Bengal. That we have seen with the Marathas, the pretext of the first Anglo-Maratha war. We have discussed that. So they did not respect the authority of the Bengal, and nothing in the act which could address the people in India. Obviously, ये तो सारे act का one common thing you can identify, that all the acts have nothing to do with the Indians. Even if they have written something, it was just for the sake of writing. Nothing substantial was there for Indians in any regard, no matter whatsoever. Right? These are the defects in the regulating act. And for these defects, the regulating act was amended further. In 1781, it was amended. So Amendment Act has happened in 1781. Then the Pitt's India Act in 1784. In 7181 amendment, they have reduced the power of the Supreme Court below the Governor General Council. So that discrepancy which was there with the Governor General and the Supreme Court, that happened. Supreme Court went below the Governor General. Secondly, in Pitt's India Act, they tried to resolve a few more issues. We will see. For example, they have given the veto power to the Governor General, and the presidencies were made formally subordinate to the Governor General. ठीक है, चलो. Let's very quickly talk about our last topic, that is the Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act के बाद was estimate of Warren Hastings, and that with this we'll finish. So Pitts came into the office in 1783, and then Pitts is a prime minister of your Great Britain, and he again in this time Pitt's India Act has come. This is 1784. You can change it 1780. Okay, right. So there will be some provision that will be there in the Britain, and some provision will be there in India. This is how we will look at it. For example, what happened in the Britain? This court of director, they were said that you can have continue your commercial functions, but now on you will not have any political functions. You don't have any political functions, not at all. They created a board of control. Remember this board of control. Now this board of controls, it will have all the political power, whose head will be the secretary of the state. Okay, this board of control whose head will be the secretary of state. So it was created, it will control all the matters of civil, military, and revenue. Full access to the company's record will be given, power to send governors and alter them. Governor ko from Britain to India, they have the power to send them and alter them. कि भाई किसको हटाना है, किसको लगाना है, who has to be removed, who has to be fired, who has to be recruited, every power is given, the political power given to the board of control. So dual control established again. One is the court of director and second is a board of control. Court of director, board of control. Court of director financial, board of control the political. ठीक है? Okay, it's a Pitt's India Act provision. Pitt's India Act, sorry. 1784. Chalo. Then again, this is wrong, sorry. I just forgot it in the editing part. So what about India? So India, within India Council, you have the 4 members were reduced to 3 members. The 4 members reduced to 3 members, and that included commander-in-chief of the King's Army. So within that 3 members, you have one member who is the commander in chief. And remember, all these people will come in handy. For example, when we'll go to 1944, after more than 140 years after this act, we will see that commander in chief will be become the Indian for the first time. Obviously, all these people are British. So we will try to trace the Pitt's India Act when to that extent. And this is about the extent you have to read all these acts, because everything will keep on changing on these acts. These are the official acts which are coming from the England to the India. Now this Governor General will have a casting vote. In the case, for example, there are 4 people total, 2 plus 2 happens. So the final veto or the casting vote happens to be with the Governor General. Calcutta will be given the presidency over the cases of war, revenue, and the diplomacy over the Bombay and the Madras. All the civil and the military affairs ordered to be provided to provide this COD, full inventory of their property. Court of director को सारा each and everything these officers have to provide the property details, just like the IS officers today have to provide all the details of their property to the government. This is it. So let's talk about the Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings in 1987, he was impeached in the parliament by the Edmund Burke and the Wings by administrative excesses. All these cases, Rohilla War, the cases of the Nandakumar, treatment of the Raja Chat Singh, and the pressure on the Begum of Awadh. All these things we have read before. Okay. After a long trial till 1795, Warren Hastings was completely acquitted. He received pension from the company and lived till 1818. Okay. Chalo. He resigned India from India in 1785. If you talk about the estimate of the Warren Hastings, this is taken from a Tamil Nadu board book. You can remember it as a conclusion. For example, he was a gifted personality with strong will, great energy, and resourcefulness. More importantly, you can see that how he was surrounded by the hostile forces within the presidency and within his own administration, external enemies as well as the internal opponents, with extraordinary patience and firmness, because he has taken a lot of reforms. He laid the foundation which Warren Hastings laid down, the other erected the stately edifice. So these lines you can remember. If you write in your mains, obviously you'll get half a mark extra. Okay. His long stay in Akbar in the shadow of the Mughal cultural tradition gave him enough opportunity to learn the Oriental language such as Bengali and Persian and to develop an Oriental taste. He considered Indian culture as the basis of the sound Indian administration, which was a good thing. And that's why he patronized, for example, Asiatic Society of Bengal and all these things, William Jones. So now we are done with the Warren Hastings. Just to summarize what we have done, I'm not putting the PPTs again. Okay. So Warren Hastings, if you want to summarize, first of all, we have seen the times in which he has come. What are the times? Then we have seen the time in which the parliament was now furious that we need to regulate these things because they have asked for £1 million of loan. Then we have discussed the reforms of Warren Hastings, 6-fold reforms that we have seen, twofold, then 1-1. This is how you can remember. So revenue and commercial, administrative and judicial, external, and last one was external, and the last one was your social. Then we talked about the, for example, 4 cases, that is Rohilla Khand War. We talked about the Banaras Raja case, that we talked about the Begum of the Awadh, and how he jet with the Nandakumar. Even if you remember 3 of the cases, that is more than enough. And then finally, we have read about the impeachment. We have read about in detail about the regulating act and the pitfalls, the problems with it. Then we have talked about the amendment 2 amendment, 1781 amendment, then 1784 amendment. That is the Pitt's India Act. With this, we finished today's session. Today is the first session in our theme 1, theme 2, that is administration and the socio-economic policies, and we'll end our session today. And we'll meet in the next session when we'll talk about the next Governor General, that is the Lord Cornwallis, which is a very, very important Governor General to remember. Okay? So see you in the next session. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.